Well, here we are. Episode 10 of our little show here. How's everybody doing? Hopefully you're doing pretty well. You know, I was all ready to come out tonight and rant about the election and what a thin-skinned loser the president is, but I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to trash the GOP for the mockery they're making of the democratic process. I'm not going to point out the hypocrisy of their belief that if the ballots cast put Trump as the winner, there was no fraud, but if those same ballots show Trump losing, it could only be the result of a massive multi-state conspiracy by the Democrats for which there's not, at least at the moment, a shred of evidence. There is, however, evidence of the head of the USPS intentionally sabotaging the operations of the post office in an effort to deliver a Trump victory. Seems to be, anyway. There also seemed to be massive voter suppression in Ohio, Nevada, Texas, Florida, Arizona, New Hampshire. And let's not forget the postal worker in Pennsylvania who was allegedly paid $130,000 by GOP donors to lie about vote tampering. But I'm not going to talk about that. Nope. I'm not even going to talk about the blind allegiance of Mr. McConnell, Mr. Graham, Mr. Paul, Mr. Cruz, Mr. Rubio, Mr. Blunt, Mr. Kennedy, and the rest of the sycophants who are mainlining the Trump Kool-Aid and putting greed ahead of country in an obvious and desperate attempt to stay in power when more than 80% of the country believes that their guy lost. I was ready to talk about all that, but I'm not going to. You know, I typically don't get real political on the shows. I try not to. In fact, I'm more political in my art than I am on the shows, but I feel like I need to take a little liberty here. The last 4 years, punctuated by the last week especially, have been an emotional and existential roller coaster. And from where I sit, and you're free to disagree, but the only glimpse of a statesman president we've seen since 2016 was watching President-elect Biden give a speech to the American people. And not just those who voted for him. He was very clear about that, but all of us, red or blue. He was humble, hopeful, human, right? Exactly how a president should speak to the country he serves. And whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, let's just say for a minute that we're going to drop our collective cynicism about the other side and pretend that we're all on the same team. Wasn't it refreshing to see a leader who didn't try to make everything about himself? Didn't it feel just a little bit good to be talked to rather than talked at? And regardless of where you stand on issues like healthcare or taxes or abortion or same-sex marriage, didn't it feel like maybe, just maybe, this guy cares about you, about your needs, not just his own? Didn't it? I mean, if you can't see that, even just for an instant, just for a moment, then, man, we are miles apart And while I wish you well, I really don't know how we find any common ground to stand on. Anyway, that's all I've got for that. I want to move on, but I feel like I needed to get that out. So thank you for indulging me. If I've lost some of you, be well. If you've got something to add, feel free to call in 202-539-0209, or you can Skype me at Saddoris. Otherwise, we'll change gears right after this from Rex Banner. Be right back.
Do you want to be a bad man? Yes, you do. Do you want to taste sweet salvation underneath the summer moon? Do you need another hand now? Yes, you do. Go see Miss Josie down on Columbus Avenue. Down in the city, there's a place that never sleeps. You can see it all up past 57th Street. Music is hot and the drinking there's free. It'll turn you upside down before you count to 3. You're looking for a helping hand. You need a friendly face. Feeling good, you can barely stand. You're falling all over the place. You're looking for a helping hand. You need a friendly face. Feeling good, you can barely stand. You're falling all over the place. You own it, they got it, they flown it, you bought it. Ow! Do you want to be a bad man? Yes, you do. Do you want to taste sweet salvation underneath the summer moon? Do you need another hand now? Yes, you do. Go see Miss Josie down on Columbus Avenue. Columbus Avenue. Ha! Go see Miss Josie down on Columbus Avenue. Columbus Avenue. Ha! Go see Miss Josie down on Columbus Avenue. You're looking for a helping hand. You need a friendly face. Feeling good, you can barely stand. You're falling all over the place. You're looking for a helping hand. You need a friendly face. Feeling good, you can barely stand. You're falling all over the place. You own it, they got it, they flown it, you bought it. Ow! Go see Miss Josie down on Columbus Avenue. All right, Columbus Avenue.
All right. Rex Banner, Summer Moon, little James Brown thing happening there. So last week, I had the pleasure of having another conversation with Gregory Crewdson, who is, boy, if he's not at the top, he's really near the top of my favorite photographers list. And he's just a sweetheart. He's just as nice as he could be. Very generous with his time. And so that is the latest episode of Process Driven. And one of the things that he talked about, and I thought this was really interesting, and it's something that I've kind of explored before, and it's the idea, and we talked about it a little bit a couple shows ago, the ideas of influence and inspiration. And one of the things that he was talking about, in fact, I used it as the little teaser for the show, the audio teaser, and it's this idea that he, while there are many influences and photographers that have inspired him over the years, he's not actively thinking about those pictures, those photographers, those inspirations when he's making a picture. But he did say something that I thought was really interesting, and that is that he uses a specific kind of car in his photographs because those were the kinds of cars that he saw in Stephen Shore's pictures or Joel Sternfeld's pictures. And so subconsciously, those are reminders. They're touchstones. They're totems to a time when he was coming up. And it relates to this idea. And Gregory has talked about it. Brian Eno has talked about it. And that is that as an artist, you have this one main story to tell. And Gregory has talked about that. And the way Eno put it was, he said that he's only ever had one idea, and he's just been circling it and chasing it and refining it for decades. And Gregory agreed. He said pretty much the same thing, that there is this period in your life when you're coming of age, when you're figuring out who you are and what you love and what you hate and what you stand for, and the movies that you love and the books that you love and the music that you love. And all of those things sort of seep into you and take root. And eventually, if we get lucky and we put in the time, we put in the work, those things influence our voice, our creative voice, our vision, that thing that we're trying to say with our work. And I just thought it was fascinating. I thought it was really interesting that so many, years later, he is still exploring themes that he started exploring, as he said, when he started coming of age. And I remember really vividly, in fact, I was talking to Adrian about this the other day. There was a group of us, a small group, 4 people, that used to go to the movies together in high school. And I remember us going to see The Breakfast Club one night and staying after the film ended, just sitting in the auditorium for like an hour talking about the movie and the characters that we related to and the characters that we didn't relate to, and how Hughes just kind of nailed our adolescence, right? And if you've never seen a John Hughes film, Breakfast Club, 16 Candles, and Pretty in Pink those are the ones. And even now, however many decades later, I can watch those films and still be taken right back. Star Wars, E.T., Jaws, French Connection, All the President's Men, Dog Day Afternoon, the movies of the 70s that are still very prominent in my either conscious or unconscious. They're in both places, actually. And then when a film comes out that taps into that, and I watched one the other day again. It's a terrific movie called Super 8 that J.J. Abrams did, and it is absolutely an homage to Spielberg and Close Encounters, and has that same kind of well, it's got the same aesthetic sensibility, but it has a similar story and similar pacing and similar characters, and I found myself every time I watch that movie, I find myself being sort of hurled back 30 odd years to seeing films like Close Encounters and Jaws and E.T. for the first time. And it makes me wonder about my own voice in my work. And if you've seen any of the paintings that I've done, they all have this kind of propaganda feel to them. And they're based around fictional sort of Cold War narratives. And I don't really know where that came from, other than kind of growing up, during the Reagan administration, but I wasn't really political in high school, so I'm not sure where that influence came from, but it's there. So I thought tonight we could talk about some of those things, and I think, John, did you reach out to me about? I think somebody's in the chat. John wanted to reach out and talk about something that came up during that conversation, feel free to call in 202-539-0209, or if you've got something to add, feel free to call in or Skype me at Saddoris. Wait, let me just make sure I've got Skype on. That would be silly, wouldn't it? Yeah, okay. So this idea of holding on to the things and being inspired by the things that you discovered when you came of age, do you find that those things are present in your work? Are they present to a great degree in your work? Are they hinted at? Who wants to dive into that? Let's see where we can go with it. 202-539-0209. Let's see. Let me cue up some music just in case here. One of the other things I wanted to touch base on is I want to get some book selections, some book suggestions rather, from you guys. I have been going through my photo books, and I think I'm going to either sell or give away some, and maybe look for some more to get. I've got a list going. In fact, I don't own any Stephen Shore books. Isn't that weird? I mean, as a fan of that kind of work as well, I don't own any. John asks, says in the chat, sorry, can't call tonight, but 2 thoughts. Does that mean that only the young can speak to the now? And what does that mean for those of us coming to art in the second or third acts of our life? You know, that's a great question. That is a fantastic. Those are both fantastic questions. I'd love to talk to young people and see where their heads are at. I'd love to talk to, late teens, early 20-somethings and see where their heads are at in terms of making. Are they feeling this same way? Are they feeling that they're just coming into their own as artists, or are their influences going back further? I don't know. That's a great question, and I'd love to find the answer to that. Second one was, what does this mean for those of us coming to art in the second or third acts of our lives? I'm right there with you, John, and I feel like the things that I've been saying with my work aren't really the things that I feel like I want to say. And I think maybe that is, let me back up a minute. When I first started painting again in 2008, after not painting for, long time, since 98. So when I first started painting again, I wasn't really trying to say anything. I was exploring technique. I was exploring process. And the work that came out of that period, 2008, 2009, because then my mother died in 2009 and I kind of shut down for a while, excuse me. But for those 2 years, I was really exploring process, and I was more focused on the how than the what or the why. I was trying to get the process to work the way I wanted it to work. I was trying to combine digital and analog processes, and the imagery that came out is just kind of what came out because I thought it looked cool. I didn't really, I wasn't really thinking about message or voice or, what am I trying to say? I just thought that these kinds of images were dramatic and they resonated for some reason, but it wasn't conscious. And I find myself right there with you, John, in that second or third, hopefully not third. Hopefully I'm still in the second act. That's me knocking wood. And I really don't know what, if anything, I have to say, if that makes sense. I think that's one of the reasons that I love talking to other people about what they do and what they are trying to say with their work is I find hearing your stories wildly inspiring. And I find that it opens me up to new ways of looking at my own work, whether that's past work and diving into, did it really mean something, or am I my own sort of revisionist historian in the way that I'm looking at my own work? Was there really something there that I was trying to say? I just wasn't aware of it. That's entirely possible too. But I am definitely in that position of trying to figure out what I have to say. And I think the difference between, let's call it the second act now and when I was in college, was I felt very burdened by having to have something to say. Right. I felt tormented by it. I had to figure out what I was trying to say and who am I as an artist and what is my message and what is, all of that stuff that you go through. And I think the difference now is, and it's not that I'm trying to be sort of dismissive about it, but if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. I'm still enjoying the process. If I don't have some sort of great epiphany about what it is that I'm trying to say, I'm okay exploring color. I'm okay exploring shape and line because maybe something comes out of that. I think that's one of the reasons why I did a batch of 36 small color studies and pattern studies just to see what came out of it. There was no thought in my head about what am I trying to say with this work. I just ended up mocking up a series of patterns that I thought looked interesting, that I thought could be combined in a number of ways, because you can take these pieces and rotate them 90 degrees, rotate them 180 degrees, stick them together and make multiple different types of patterns. They were colors that I'm fond of. They're colors that I use in a lot of other work, but I didn't think beyond it and try to think of what the work had to say. It was okay to just make something interesting to look at. Sometimes a pretty picture is a pretty picture, and it doesn't have to be anything more than that. There doesn't have to be anything on the card other than, I don't know, Arizona sunset or, whatever the thing is. Sometimes that's okay. And I think we fall into this, it's not a trap, it's not a rut, but we fall into this pattern of thinking that we have to say something profound with every piece of work. And I just don't think that's true. I think you can, but it's almost like trying to come up with a viral video. You can't really do that. That's beyond your control. John responds in the chat, that is a great luxury I think we have and should enjoy as someone who isn't young and needing to survive on our art and our voice. Well, honestly, I think that's one of the big mistakes is deciding that you have to make a living from your art. And that if you can't make a living from your art, then either you aren't worth anything or the art isn't worth anything. It's fairly presumptuous to think that just because you like to do something and that you show some skill, some ability, that other people are going to like it enough to allow you to make a living from it. It's great work if you can get it, but I don't know that that's a hard one to just sort of dive into, I think. And I think there's a lot of middle ground between not making anything and making your entire living. I guess you can do it, but I think that setting yourself up for that is, it's a question of managing expectation, I think. And it's ultimately what caused me to stop painting. Was I made that realization. Well, I guess it was a realization. I made a decision that I was never going to be, insert famous artist here, de Kooning, Pollock, Rauschenberg. But, you know, in fact, I sent a message to Jerry Sauls about this. And if you don't know Jerry Sauls, he's a terrific art critic. Go watch a movie called The Price of Everything, a terrific HBO documentary on the art world. And I sent a message to him about just what we're talking about. And he was very encouraging and said, look, just be you. Just you know, don't try to be someone else's. Don't try to be someone else in terms of how they manage their career or how they produce their work. You know, we've got one of them basically. Let's work on getting you to be you. And if that means you can make a living from it, that's great. But if you don't make a living from it, that's also pretty great, because the expression is the point, right? Getting the work out into the world is the point, and that's what you have control over. You don't have control over, you know, whoever's going to buy the work. But you do have control over making the work, or at least deciding to make the work. That might be even closer. Let's take a break and let that sink in for a minute. This is, I'm going to play one more tune. This is, let's play Simi Fly. This is Roza. 202-539-0209, or you can Skype me at Saddoris.
Open your eyes, what can you see around? Wind of the open sky, over the siren sound. This is a dream, getting the royal scar, holding a diamond blade, throwing it far. Holding your breath still, you jump the fire. We'll just sit and wait till you see me fly. You know they'll never catch me for it. See me fly, the way I put my finger on it. See me fly, you got it, then try to tell me you got the wrong guy. See me fly, you know they'll never catch me for it. See me fly, the way I put my finger on it. See me fly, you got it, then try to tell me you got the wrong guy. Look at them now, all of the noise they make, counting the cards to one. Queen of hearts never breaks. Falling asleep here might just take a while. Try not to grind your teeth, dreaming to touch my style. Well, can't say I blame you, trying to come close to, but all you can do. See me fly, you know they'll never catch me for it. See me fly, the way I put my finger on it. See me fly, you got it, then try to tell me you got the wrong guy. See me fly, you know they'll never catch me for it. See me fly, the way I put my finger on it. See me fly, you got it, then try to tell me you got the wrong guy. Got the wrong. Got the wrong guy. Then try to tell me you got the wrong guy.
All right, that's Simi Fly by Roza. It's got a Billie Eilish kind of feel to it, doesn't it? I like that. Hey, just as a reminder, all of the music that you are hearing is licensed from artlist.io. Still loving them. If you are a YouTube creator or a filmmaker or a podcaster, give them a look. Artlist.io. There's a link in the show notes. You can get 2 months free added on to your subscription if you sign up. So thank you to art list. Excuse me. So, yeah, all of this is really heady stuff, and there aren't any, prescriptive sort of answers to it. It's something that we continually kind of wrestle with as we try to put things out into the world. And one of the goals of doing this show every week is to hopefully, carve out a space where we can talk about it. Because I know I'm going through stuff. I know I always go through things. And based on some of the calls that we've had on previous episodes, there are a lot of people out there going through the same things. And it's not relegated to people who are new, who are young, who are just getting it. It's all across the board at virtually every sort of level or strata of maker. We all go through these things of trying to figure out what we're doing and why we're doing it, and does anybody see it or care, or what do I do next? All of this stuff is, I think it's part of the process. I don't think you can get away from it. One of the other things that Gregory said the other day is that, in his opinion, and I think on a lot of levels I agree with him, is that it should be a struggle. It shouldn't come easy. It shouldn't be life or death necessarily, but there should be obstacles to overcome, whether those are emotional obstacles, technical obstacles, creative obstacles. I think that there's a greater sense of accomplishment and a greater sense of earning the results, earning what you've managed to make and put out into the world. And at least speaking for myself, I am very motivated by sort of effort and doing the work. And Adrienne will, if she calls in, will tell you the same thing, that that's one of my languages is the actual effort of the doing. And that on many levels, the thing that I'm making, whatever that thing is evidence of the doing, right? It's the proof of the process kind of thing. But for me, it's the doing, the making, the process always comes first. And maybe I've just answered my own question from earlier of why I find coming up with a voice, coming up with something to say, such a challenge, is because that's not really where my focus or my curiosity or passion, whatever word we want to insert in there, maybe that's not what I'm focused on, but I'm focused on the actual mechanics of it, more so than I don't know, gosh, almost the ephemeral nature of it. But that doesn't sound right either. Let me see if I can get Adrienne to call in. She can help me clarify some of this. Okay. Does any of this ring true for you guys? Does it make sense, or am I off on a tangent somewhere by myself? Hi there.
Hi there.
Am I hanging myself? Am I out swinging by myself here, or do you think I'm onto something?
Yeah, I think you're onto something, and I think there are a couple interesting threads here. John's questions and comments are interesting, and what Gregory said, tying back to to something that came up a couple of shows ago about whether struggle is required to make great art. It does remind me of John's question here, because I think there is, to his first question, I don't think that only the young can speak to the now, because I think that anyone at any life stage can speak to the now through their respective lens.
Mm-hmm.
So, my daughter, young people are going to have a different relationship and experience to the now.
Sure. Yeah. Sylvia's now and my now are very different nows.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I think that those, and I think that those are value. I think those those each have value.
Mm-hmm.
Those respective lenses each bring value. Yeah, John's responding in the chat. I mean, certainly the pop culture references, the relationship with technology, things like that our kids are directly experiencing and influencing through their use, is different from how those things are mediated, by us.
Right.
So
yeah, the iPhone 8 is the lamest device that she will ever know. Think about that.
Well, we've talked to her before about she doesn't know life before cell phones. She doesn't know, you and I remember when microwaves and technology and things and different types of technologies for making and experiencing the world have sort of come through. But what I was also going to say is that I think that there's sort of a constellation or a kaleidoscope of perspectives on the now, based on what the maker is bringing to it. And I think that's part of what Crutzen was reflecting on in having those conscious and subconscious influences show up in his work.
Sure.
That maybe he can stop and pin them down a little bit, but they're kind of in there because they were part of that, that formative, the creative stew that he has at this point in his life, was put together through lots of things have entered into that. And I was saying to you the other day, I think on one of the live streams, the Instagram live streams, but maybe separately, is that for those of you who don't know, I taught college for a stretch, and while of course it was great to have college age students in my classes because they were passionate, had all this energy, and would often really bring sort of a freshness and sort of newness and energy to the conversations. I really loved having non-traditional age students in my classes and teaching sort of continuing ed classes and things like that, because they had more life experiences to draw from.
Sure. A very different set of perspectives.
And a very different set of sort of motivations about sort of why they were there and things like that. So I think that those, I really sort of value those different sort of stances, whether it's talking about an issue, reading a text, or, I would think being a maker, too. Did you see the latest comment that John added in the chat? Because I like it. I think it's also interesting.
And it's not to say that they can't explore the old. There seems to be quite a wave of young photographers reveling in expired film and such, even if their output is then to put it on Instagram. Yeah, 100%. And they are going to do something different with that older medium than I will, which I think is interesting.
Yeah. And I think that is there's almost a rediscovery of those older methods of making, even though the distribution channels like Instagram and whatever are totally new. So there are these there are these interesting sort of mashups happening of the means of producing and the platforms for distributing that work or putting it out there.
I wonder if, let me ask you something. As a sociologist, do you feel like, and again, maybe I'm way off base, but do you feel like, partially at least, because of the pace of technology, because of the demands of getting new content, there's that word again, out there, that young people are less burdened with what to make in favor of just to make? Like, do you think that they're less concerned with finding that sort of voice and instead I just need to make, I need to vlog every day and something will come out. It's almost that Gary V kind of document, don't create mentality. Just get the stuff out there and the audience will find it. I
would think as a generational trend that may be true.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I wouldn't even pretend to know what that means or what that looks like for young folks who are trying to seriously make a go of making art, sort of as or putting themselves out there sort of creatively as an intentional choice,
mm-hmm.
or trying to make a sort of professional go of it. I do think that in general I think there seems to be a lot of cultural permission for young folks to DIY, to be a streamer, a maker, an online gamer. I think that there is a, go and make and do, and some of it is documenting, some of it is, I think the trends around blogs and vlogging and things like that. Because the technology has made it, has lowered the barrier to entry, basically. Right. Has allowed sort of anybody to sort of DIY, whether it's putting music up or self-publishing or things like that. I do think that probably has loosened some of the traditional norms around who gets to make art. And because there doesn't have to be this gatekeeping in the same way.
Sure.
The methods for creating things and putting them out there in the world are a lot more accessible.
I do think there is. And go ahead.
No.
I was just going to say, I do think there is a different. There's a different way of approaching art and again, content. I got stuck in a rabbit hole. I mean, I went to school for technical theater, for those of you who may not know much about my background. So set design, costume design, I was a prop master, and there was a whole other life in regional theater. And there are these YouTube channels of people who make props. Some people modify Nerf pistols. Some people 3D print things. Some people use EV foams. I mean, there is this entire world that I have only scratched the surface on. And they seem to be less concerned with what does this prop mean as much as they are, look, I made this mini nuke from Fallout, and 50,000 other people now just downloaded the PDF plans and they're going to make one too. So there's a different value proposition that I think, at least in part, that technology has made available, and for some, not for all, because there are definitely still there's no shortage of people pursuing what we would call fine art as a career or vocation, But there's also these other categories where you can be a maker, you can be well respected. I mean, look at somebody like Adam Savage. The guy is a monster in terms of the things that he makes, and he's incredibly well respected by the film community, the cosplay community, just the scientific and sort of geeky community. And I think part of that appeal is the delivery method that you kind of alluded to before. That delivery mechanism has changed so that people with very specific areas of making art and different definitions of what that art means or looks like are able to still play in this pool.
Yeah, and I think there are a couple other things related to that too. I mean, the fact that folks can find information and ideas and how-tos and can connect with communities of people with similar interests online now is amazing. You don't just have to wait for one conference a year or hope that there's someone in your neighborhood or that you meet up in some other sort of real life situation who happens to know how to do this thing that you're interested in. I mean, honestly, that the creation of online communities and online networks of people
right.
Is, I think, has probably been a huge boost to that sort of DIY trend, whether it's fine art or craft or other sorts of making. And that's what the other thing I was going to say is I don't know that we can discount the influence of things like cooking channels, cooking shows, HGTV, all of those. I think I would guess that there's sort of a rise in hobbyist makers.
Mm-hmm.
And people who, to come back to John again, people who come to art or come to making in their second or third act of life. People who sort of either discover or rediscover a creative urges and finally either have the resources or the network or the information to allow them to sort of explore that some. And I think technology and media have made it easier maybe than ever before to find kindred spirits, information, all of the things that might let somebody explore those avenues.
Right. I just read something the other day, and I can't remember her name, and I'll try and find it and put it in the show notes, but a woman started, it's basically LinkedIn for creatives. It's another platform very similar to LinkedIn, but it's specifically tailored to and targeted at creatives. And I thought that was terrific because there are different parameters that you're going to search for, and there are different ways that you're going to present yourself if you're, a painter versus an accountant.
Right. Yeah, and I think the for all of the deserved or not, bemoaning that many of we olds do about technology and screen time and all of that. I mean, the fact is that it has also facilitated connection and community, and there are amazing networks of folks that have self-organized because of what technology can enable.
Right. Yeah, and I feel like it is. I mean, I think we've only scratched the surface. I mean, I think that we're seeing now a refinement, and the next iteration of things like Twitter and Facebook and and even Instagram. I think the next iteration of those things are going to be really interesting. I think that that somebody out there is working on, and I don't know who that is, but somebody out there is working on what's next and seeing around that corner. And I don't think it's just going to be another post-comment tag sort of situation. I think it's going to be something different, and I can't say what that is because if I could see it, I'd build it. But I'm excited to see what the next iteration of virtual connectivity looks like.
Yeah, and I do think that, for better, not for worse, maybe for better, that's one of the things that might come out the other side of this whole pandemic and lockdown and mass movement to sort of a virtual world. People who haven't embraced some of these technologies and platforms have done so now. I think it's spurring on a lot of innovation. I think there are people really rethinking, has definitely sort of dragged some people along and gotten people to sort of open up and ask some questions about how might we interact differently? What are the possibilities? What have we not yet tried that we might be willing to look at and try in terms of how we connect? And so I think that may be one of the good things that comes out of all of this is that is sort of an opening of the minds and imagination.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I mean, I think because right now we're trying to more or less replicate the in-person experience virtually. And I think there are inherent limitations in that. Yeah, it's great to be able to, Zoom or FaceTime or Skype or whatever with your family and friends, coworkers, etc. But I feel like there's something else out there that takes that experience to a different place. And I don't know what that is, but I'm excited to see it when it lands.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, that's certainly happening kind of in the conventional kind of business world, and I think it will, take on some interesting forms and probably be led by the creative world in terms of, getting around that corner, that sort of technology and creative world. We'll probably start to go there first. We didn't call out that Richard put a quote in the chat about the struggle being real and the struggle being where the truth is, and I do think that that's an interesting. I think there is an observation in there in terms of there needs to be some sort of tension or friction or experience or conflict. That those kinds of things breed and bring a sort of energy that I think can be one of the catalysts for art or for making.
Agreed. Yeah. But it doesn't have to drown you. And I think that's what I tried to get at earlier is it doesn't it can be an invigorating energy. It doesn't have to be a stifling or debilitating energy.
Right. And to your point too, it can be the result of that there can be joy in the process, and there can be beauty or this is going to come out clunky, but a purely aesthetic output from that doesn't have to have necessarily deep meaning or deep narrative.
Right.
There are valid places in the world for art and creativity that are aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel that way about people like Turner. If I look at a Turner painting, I have no idea what he was trying to say, and I don't care. I love the texture. I love the color. I love the light. I love that that's how he saw what was in front of him. I don't need to have some sort of political or existential or, there doesn't have to be anything more than that. I can just look at it and go, that's great.
Yeah, and I think that people who are interested in those questions about meaning or the need for meaning in a piece of art, I think they will be particularly interested to listen to your conversation with Crutzen, and the part of the conversation, especially around how he thinks of his audience and what he does or does not say.
Sure. Yeah. The amount of space that he grants them.
Makes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, folks who are really interested in that piece about sort of meaning and the maker's meaning versus what the audience brings to it, I think would really like that part of it.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Richard says that he's referring to struggle more in the way to get past the superficial or reactionary.
Richard, is that on the part of you or the audience? Is it the way you react to it, the way an audience reacts to it? What are we talking about here? Yeah, all of this. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think I read that. Yeah, he says more in the making.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I sort of read that as a putting stuff sort of out there, even if you don't know necessarily where it's going, or putting out the first stuff that comes to mind, because you sort of go through that to get to maybe a richer expression or exploring something over and over again. So what we were talking about the other day on the live stream about Preston and the fishing hole, or Josh Jackson and his deep experience in the neighborhoods where he photographs.
Right.
Being so familiar or sort of working with a medium or with subject matter enough so that you almost might get beyond the obvious.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the way.
Takes.
Yeah, that's the way our brains kind of work visually, and that's what both Preston and certainly Joshua have alluded to. That the more you visit that place, or the more you use a tool, or the more the more something becomes familiar, the more detail appears, the more nuance appears. Maybe that's a better way to put it, or the more nuance is possible.
Right, and that ties back to what you shared about that part of your conversation with Crutzen and the Brian Eno thing. It's about sort of revisiting a narrative or a set of themes or a location repeatedly, because, you get more and more kind of immersed in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good stuff. Real good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Well, why don't we end here? I had something else, but I think I'm going to save it for next time.
Right on.
Thank you for calling in and saying hello, my dear.
I'm always happy to.
So let's see. What do we need to talk about? Let's see. We do these morning walk and talks on Instagram Live. Those have been a lot of fun. If you can't get enough of this kind of stuff, we're usually on Instagram in the mornings as we take Cooper through the forest for his morning walk. A reminder: all the music came from artlist.io, and there's a link in the show notes. You'll get 2 extra months when you sign up for a subscription. I've really been loving them a lot, actually. It doesn't sound like stock music. I mean, there are those things. If you need like, energetic presentation music, yes, there's that, but there's also, down tempo and pop and rock and jazz and folk and indie and, all kinds of stuff. I've really been enjoying them. Also, I've been working on a new newsletter, but I'm kind of stuck on the name. And Adrian and I have been talking about some names, but we can't really land. We have yet to land on one that we really like. So if you've got newsletter name suggestions, find me on Instagram or Twitter at Jeffrey Saddoris, or email me at talkback@jeffreysaddoris.com, and subscribe to everything, wherever you listen to podcasts. Jeffrey Saddoris, everything. That'll get you all of my shows, process-driven iterations, in between one-off conversations with Bill Wadman and others. John asks, what is the theme/angle for the newsletter? It's kind of a bridge, John. It's a bridge between previous episodes, what's coming up on new episodes, and just kind of an overview of things that I might have found interesting over the course of the week or 2 weeks. I don't think I'm going to do it weekly, but things that I just happen to see in my orbit and want to let people know about. I want it to be brief. I don't want it to be a long read. I want it to just be kind of a touch base and a point of discussion. So if you have, questions or comments or feedback, you can respond there rather than emailing me, and that way other people can take part in that discussion. Does that sound right, Adrian? That sounds right, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And we talked about that almost being a way to connect these episodes, because coming out of each week of this, we keep talking about the things that come up, and a newsletter might be sort of a stepping stone or a way to bridge some of these shows to sort of look back at things that came up and tee up maybe a couple of things that we've been thinking about, so
right.
that people who follow along there.
I just want to take the conversations public. I get emails, I get messages, and they're private messages, but I'd rather make some of those conversations, give them the opportunity to be public, so that more people can chime in and potentially benefit from them. John says connections would work for you in a couple ways, but that title has certainly been used a lot. Yes, that has been used a lot. And we thought about connective tissue, but then that makes me sound like a surgeon or some sort of medical person. I don't think that works. But if you've got ideas, shoot them off to me. Talkback@jeffreysaddoris.com. And I guess we'll see you next time. Thanks for letting me not rant at the beginning. I was pretty restrained. You listened to it, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, honey, for calling in. Thank you all for listening. I appreciate you being here. I think we're doing something cool with these. I wish I were better at tap dancing over dead air, but I'm getting there. I'm getting a little better. And it's a skill. It's a practice, isn't it, Adrian?
It is a practice.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will see you next week. Do you have anything to add? Like the Barry Gibb talk show? Do you have anything to add, Robin? No, I don't.
No. Hope everybody's doing well out there. It is nice to see people chiming in and stuff, and to get to connect on some of this stuff. And if you have questions or suggestions for things that you would like Jeffrey to talk about on future live shows, I think that would be great to send them his way.
Yeah, I am happy to get ideas and suggestions. That would be really great. Because again, the whole point of all of this is to make it collaborative, right? So, all right, are you ready to be done?
Yeah, play us out.
Play us out. All right.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see you next week. Thanks for being here.